Now we're moving out of the honey houses and back to the bee yards. So I'm going to ask Dan Davidson to come up and say a few words. The next two speakers, and I think we'll probably move Rick until after lunch, just so the food doesn't get cold. But they're going to talk about how kind of what their operations are being managed for, and how they manage their operations for their specific goals and try to optimize that. So I'll let Dan take it away.
I mentioned to somebody in the back there, I'm probably a little bit more to the point than the big elaborations we've had earlier. So I'll do my best to get us back on schedule. First thing, I just listed all the revenue streams I could think of. There are a lot in Ontario. We're pretty lucky for a number of different reasons. We have a longer growing season, earlier spring for bee production and queen rearing. And there's a fairly big population base to if you wanted to retail. Out of these ones, I do 4. My number 1 is probably honey production. Number 2 is pollen collection. We do sell some bees if we have bees to sell in the spring. We like to do full-size hives. Whoever's purchasing the hives, they're happy to get nice, strong hives. I'm happy to get rid of the strongest ones because they're possibly going to swarm on me anyway. So that's what we like to do for selling bees, and then we do a couple local pollinations as well. It's very important to do what you like. You're not going to do anything well if you're not doing what you like, and you have to have everything spread out throughout the season. Can't do everything all at once, of course. So what I'm here to talk to you about is trapping bee pollen. Here is an example of a hive with, you can see all the pollen that's fallen into the tray there. I'll explain briefly how a trap works. So you can see, we have a pointer. So the bees have to enter the pollen trap entrance here. There's some bees entering. And then they have to pull themselves through this screen. So the screen is just barely big enough for the bees to fit through. So as they're squeezing through there, the pollen loads are knocked off their legs and they fall down into the tray. In our operation, we try to collect pollen once a week. We run 2,000 hives, but we only trap pollen on 500 of them. We try to do our closest yards so that we're not spending a lot of time driving to go get the pollen. We try to do it on a Saturday. It's a good Saturday job if we can get it done then. If you're only collecting pollen, we can be done by about 2 o'clock, and it's a nice Saturday job. When the traps go on, we try to get the traps on as early as we can. Sometimes we can get them on in the middle of April, and then they stay on till the end of September, beginning of October. Spring is your best time for pollen collection. Here's an example of multiple bees on a dandelion, but there's so many flowers available for pollen in the spring, and the bees are really looking for pollen because they're trying to build up. So in the springtime, we may, like in a couple days' time, a couple good flying days, it's just unbelievable the amount of pollen that they can get in those couple days. So we might step up our collection dates. If there's a rain coming or something, we may go a little earlier in the spring. One of the most important things for me is to have an airspace all the way around the pollen trap. So I kind of took this picture. I don't know if you can, I've got the tray. We've got the tray pulled out here, and you can see when the tray's in there, there's air. Air's got to get all the way around where that pollen falls into that tray. If you get pollen stacking up on something solid, and then as days go by, you get more and more pollen, that pollen will spoil, and you'll be throwing out pollen that the bees worked hard to get there, and it's just a waste of time for everybody. There's a couple different styles of traps. You can see these ones, the trays pull out the side. These ones, the trays pull out the back. There's pros and cons for each one. The ones that pull out the side, you have to have 2 rights and 2 lefts on a pallet, or else they'll pull out in the middle and hit each other. But it is nice to have, like on the side is nice, you can have 4 hives on a pallet, and it's nice and neat that way. When they pull out the back, it doesn't matter where the pollen traps are. They can switch them around or whatever. It's always going to be out the back. You're not disturbing the hive because the entrance is in the front and you're pulling out the back. But you do have to have space there. So we just cut pallets in half and have 2 hives on each pallet. Once you have it set up, it's not that big a deal. So when we go into the bee yards first off in the spring, there's obviously going to be some dead hives. So the yards that we trap pollen in, it's nice to go into the yard and collect pollen out of every single hive. So any hive that's dead, we'll install nukes into them real early so that we can install the pollen trap. And then when we go in, we collect pollen from all the different hives. So the biggest thing you need to worry about when you're trapping pollen is that hives supersede themselves all the time. If you have a regular hive with a bottom board on it, everybody can come and go as they please. Hive might supersede itself without you even knowing. But when you have a pollen trap on, the bees can come and go as they please, but the drones and the queens cannot. So this one you can see there's like these are like a bee escape type thing where drones can exit, but they can't get back in. Same as queens. And then this one, you can see the hole at the back here. I just drilled a 1/2-inch hole so that the drones could exit the back of the hive. Sometimes the bees come around here and get putting the pollen in that hole where they're not supposed to, so we can just put a piece of grass or a stick in there for a week's time to get them back around to the front. But anyway, yes, you'll have to be aware. If a hive wants to supersede, the queen will not get out and get back. If a hive wants to swarm, the same thing. We found queens stuck in these. They can't get in or out. They've been stuck in these screens. So when we're going around collecting, there'll be, if we see a hive that has far less pollen than the average in the yard, we just you have to go down and check and see what's going on. More than likely, it is queenless. So we take the trap right off. We've had some talks about marking. If I think something's queenless, I'll put the trap on top of the hive underneath the lid. We'll put a frame of eggs in there. Come back. If they're building queen cells, we'll try and install a mated queen to get it back producing. But it is something you have to be aware of if you're going to trap pollen. The actual pollen collection itself is it's pretty simple. You just pull the trays out. This is how we dump it on. There's a screen in that wooden frame, and then we'll just shake all the pollen down. Anything bigger than the pollen loads will get caught in the screen, and so we just have pollen below. That's where we market it. That's all we have to take out. There are all kinds of things in the pollen when you collect it. This is a spider, of course, but some other common things are dead bees and wax moth cocoons. This is a pollen cleaner. This is Kathy and Andre Sudemans. This is how they do their pollen, how they screen their pollen. Some of these pictures are for them too, so I want to say thank you to them for sharing some pictures. I'm not a big picture taker, but anyway, once you have it screened, you have to freeze it. So we have these freezers ready for to put the pollen in. And then when we have time, or when those freezers are full, or if we get a rain day or something, we put it in, we weigh it out to 25-pound bags, and that's how it gets shipped out. So yeah, all the pollen that I produce goes to produce bumblebees. I don't do any human consumption. I'm more a wholesale guy than a retail guy, so it's makes it easier to do things at scale this way. Couple things left here. So I don't know if you can see this. Of course, we all know what poor equipment looks like. It's hard to keep up with that. But if there is a hole that happened that ants help you make inside of a box, the bees will take every ounce of pollen inside that hole and will not go through the trap, so you can't trap the pollen. So we do replace as many boxes as we can, but an easy fix during the season is just to put a piece of tape over so that they can't access that hole. And then this is a tray with a hole in it, so we actually take all of our traps off in the fall, clean them up, set aside any of the ones that need fixing. So it's a nice little bit of winter work to do. And yeah, that's it. One thing I got written down here, is that honey is awful heavy, and one good thing about pollen is it's not near as heavy as honey. But I don't know if they're going to let me take any questions if there is any, but.
That's great. Thanks, Dan. I think we do have time for a couple questions. So if you have questions for Dan and specifically sort of pollen production, feel free. I think looks like maybe Dave Stotesbury at the back there. Maybe while it's getting there, the screens you use, was that number 4 mesh?
Do you have one?
For the bees, and then number 8 mesh to sift the pollen?
I forget.
Okay.
I made those like years and years ago.
Sounds good.
I'd have to measure and get back to you.
No worries. I think Dave's got the microphone now. Or no, it's Paul Kelly. Sorry.
I have it at the moment. Yeah. Have you done any work with figuring out your production levels per colony with pollen? And how does that change year to year versus the honey flow?
Yeah, I think like you can expect about 10 pounds of pollen per hive. I've done better than that, but that's kind of the base, what you should expect to get. I've heard of people getting 20 pounds a hive, but I've never done anything close to that. But there is some variability depending on the year.
Hey, Dan, just a kind of a curiosity question. Do you have to clean the pollen to a different standard if it's going to the bumblebee world versus for human consumption?
Yeah, so we only take out anything bigger than the pollen loads. So there's obviously things that are smaller in there, like beer bugs, stuff like that. So obviously if it's going for human consumption, you'd have to take the big and the small out. But yeah, for us, we just need to take whatever's bigger.
Sorry. I thought you said that you had to freeze the pollen, and I'm not quite following that.
Yeah, so it's a fresh frozen product. So yeah, right after we collect and clean it, it has to be frozen. And then when they even come pick it up, they come pick it up with a reefer truck that will keep it frozen on its way to its end location.
Is that
It doesn't have to be dried.
No, it does not have to be dried. No.
Okay. Thank you.
For human consumption, most of the human consumption pollen is dried, but.
Do you find in the spring the hives you collect pollen from build up slower than those that you don't?
So it's all just a timing thing, right? So I actually didn't mention, but that your question made me think of it. I'll put a pollen trap on if there's 3-4 frames of bees, depend somewhere in there. So if you put a pollen trap on a hive that has 3 or 4 frames of bees, it will definitely slow down the growth of that hive. It ends up being a good thing when swarming season comes because you kind of miss the swarming season with those ones. But if they're a real big, strong hive, it does not diminish their buildup. They can still build enough pollen gets through the trap that it's not going to slow down their buildup. And then those ones are the ones we pull brood out of to make our nukes. So it's, as everyone here knows, everything that you choose to do has to intertwine with itself and work for everything you do, right? So.